also yesterday to addressing your own stakeholder challenges. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we do that, while things are still fresh in your mind, tell me some of your ahas from yesterday. Let's do a quick debrief. I know you have to think back, but take a moment and think back. What were your key takeaways from Cameron's session first? You got 2 sets of diagnostic back, some survey results. We talked about power and influence. What were your key insights from that?
We can't have all of them at the same time.
Can't have all of what?
All of both, life and strain, trust.
So not all the attributes at the same time. What else?
Sadly, some factors like appearance and flattery are effective and things that you need to be aware of. And things that you might want to distance.
Yeah, there is. It's very interesting. You said flattery, appearance. Anything else that we typically discount, but we shouldn't? Non-verbal. In general, we say it's about the non-verbals, not just what you say and what you think. It's about how you come across. So your non-verbals have a big impact on how you come across, your facial expressions. I know a CEO, every time he runs a meeting, if he hears something he doesn't like, you know what he does? He goes like this. Literally, he does this. What do you think is the impact on those around him? Something just happens to the dynamics immediately after he does this. Everybody clams up, and the atmosphere just completely changes. So what we basically say in this regard, from an influencing point of view, non-verbals matter. And by non-verbals, you could mean your body language, your eye contact, your appearance, your facial expressions, your use of gestures. When you look at somebody like Steve Jobs, when he used to give those very famous presentations, at Apple World, introducing their new product, he would rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, including particularly the use of gestures. When should I do this? When should I do that? Now, I can't do that personally because I find it very difficult to be rehearsed with stuff like that, but each one of you should think about what works for you, in terms of how you pay attention to that. Other thoughts?
I couldn't help being amazed that groups that have more women did well. I mean, I like to hear that, but I kind of almost still find that kind of burden.
So Lisa's point, groups that had women did well. Why do you think is the foundational piece underneath that? Why do you think that might be the case?
I just think it's the whole diversity argument. The more diverse group you have, the more different viewpoints you have, more different perspectives, more different skills.
So that's one reason. What else?
Cameron talked a lot about the leadership style that tends to be most effective now is sort of a collaborative group decision-making thing, and that women tend to do that. Some women, not me, but some women tend to do that better than men do, and so that is really what draws out having that woman on the team.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that. There is a researcher, her name is Jean Lippman-Newman, hyphenated words. Jean Lippman-Newman, look her up. She's at Claremont Colleges. And she has done a lot of research looking at leadership styles of men and women, and she's collected thousands of data points. And one of her key conclusions is that men And of course, this is, I don't want this to come across as a stereotype. This is just summarizing the aggregated high-level research findings, is that men have more of what we call a task-oriented style. This is the job, we need to get it done. I mean, think about how you play sports. We need to win. And women, through socialization, evolution, societal expectations, have more of what we call relationship-oriented style. So it's more about how do I connect with you to get the job done, as opposed to how do I get this done, which is more the task orientation that men have. And Jean's, her books and her research findings are quite interesting, because she's actually looked at this across cultures, across generations, across industries, and this is the bottom line conclusion. So one reason could be that if you have more of a collaborative style and you really tap into different points of view, which builds on both of your arguments, the diversity argument and the collaborative argument. That is one potential explanation. Any other thoughts?
It's good to have a devil's advocate.
Good to be a devil's advocate. Yeah, this is one of my favorite things. And even I was going to mention it this morning when Frank was talking about resistors. That's a strategy you can use with your resistors. You could say, Homa, I know that you don't really agree with what we're doing, but we'd like you to join our next meeting and express your views as a devil's advocate. Play that formal role. We really like to be challenged. We like to be stretched, taken outside of our comfort zone. What do you think that does if you do it properly?
She will be part of it.
Exactly. Through participation, through inclusion, you have what we call skin in the game. And what happens when you have skin in the game? You become more committed. You become more committed. So keep that at the back of your mind. Now, I'm not saying it's a generic strategy. Use it with every resistor. Use it with every cynic. But have it as part of your toolbox and start using it in a selective way as and when it makes sense. Because I think Dave brings out a very important point. It's a very important part of your toolbox. And I hope you take that. Okay, let's get a couple of others, okay? We'll move on. Any other ahas from Cameron's?
I think just the importance of self-awareness, just the unintended consequences of our communication styles, behaviors, things that we don't, intend to communicate, but we do consciously just from our side.
And I'm really pleased you brought this out. The word self-awareness, in a speeded up world, what happens to self-awareness? When we're speeded up, are we doing a million things? Are we running at 100 miles an hour? What happens?
We tend to just not be aware of it, the consequences of our actions.
You're not aware of it. We're operating in almost that subconscious mode. Remember the comfort zone? When you're in your comfort zone, you're on autopilot. You just do things as a matter of routine. But you're not thinking about it. How do I come across? What was my body language like? Did I look disinterested? Was I grimacing when somebody was talking to me? So I might have signaled to them that I'm really disagreeing with them. These are things that are really difficult to deal with when you're running at 100 miles an hour. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to give you the two sets of survey from Cameron's, both in terms of how you come across and how that personality profile impacts your interpersonal interaction. So I think a very important point. Yes.
I just had a comment that in one of my HR interactions, the HR person told me is that you can only concentrate on people's behavior and you cannot worry about their attitude. But culturally, from the East, I've been taught that behavior is just a symptom and attitude is what we need to work on. So I was in a little bit of a conflict, if you can comment on when we are working in a corporate office setting, how do we deal with this behavior versus attitude?
That's a really good story. The relationship between behavior and attitude. attitude? So, it's an excellent question. Let's just unravel this, because I think you're making it. What's the relationship? What do you think is the relationship between attitude and behavior?
Behavior is a symptom of the attitude?
Absolutely. So there are three things that you need to zoom in on. The first one, your values, your sense of right and wrong. And of course, a feed-in, a precursor to this is your personality. This issue of is it nature, is it nurture, are we born, are we made? So you're born with a given set of a personality and certain traits. And some of this is your wiring, some of this is our genetic background. But as we grow, the first set of things we acquire are values, sense of right and wrong. And this is something we're socialized into as children. Do you cheat? Do you lie? Well, if you've seen your parents or those around you do that, you might grow up thinking this is perfectly okay. So values to me is a set of right and wrong that drive the other things. But as I said, personality is the sort of bedrock. This is sort of the foundational piece. And that's why yesterday we wanted to give you your personality profile. Remember the 4 attributes that you were ranked on: extroversion, conscientiousness, etc. So values. Then we have attitude, and then we have behavior. Behavior is the most measurable and the most observable. You can really observe behavior. You can observe how people interact with other people. You can observe how they deal with a piece of criticism. You can observe how they engage in conversations. That's behavior. But attitude is the filter through which that behavior gets portrayed. See? Remember the conversation about filter? So to me, these three are sort of totally linked together. And my personal view is, I have to say I disagree with your HR person completely. Because I think it's making it too black and white, and it's making it too, this is what matters and this is not what matters. It's just like saying, in your body, your heart is the only thing that matters. Your lungs don't matter, your brains don't matter, it's your heart that's pumping the blood through your system. Well, it's all interconnected. If the world was so easy that we could say, oh, it's only your behavior. But the reason that a lot of people focus on behavior is because it's observable and it's measurable. So I can say, so-and-so interrupts people all the time. That's behavior. But it's linked to their attitude. If I'm dismissive of other people, I'm going to interrupt them. Dismissiveness is attitude. Interruption is behavior. Does that make sense? Do you see the relationship now between them? So I actually think this is the way I would describe it. Attitude is much harder to measure. How do you measure it? It's sort of perceived. So that's why a lot of people like to go for the behavior and not the attitude.
I agree with you, but sometimes if you talk about attitude, you're making a judgment on the person. It's very personal.
Yes.
And so if you can say, I observe these behaviors instead of, I'm judging your attitude, it's sometimes easier to get through to the person.
Yeah, and I think that's why HR people basically do that, but I think to say that that's the only thing that matters, that's not correct, because behavior is the most observable and the most measurable. Now this afternoon when you get together with Dan, our faculty member who's going to focus on coaching, he'll tell you, when you're coaching, focus on things that are observable. Because if I'm judging you, to Linda's point, how can I prove that? There's no facts, it's just my perception.
That's where the problem actually comes about, but the behaviors are difficult to correct unless the attitude is correct. That's the problem that I face.
And that's why in coaching, you need to ask lots of questions, so you're peeling back the layer of